All right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session with Education USA Libya. So whether you're following us from Libya or from any other country, welcome. So this is Amira, the Education USA advisor for Libya, and I'm so glad to have with us today Mr. Jay Luis from Northern Arizona University. Today's presentation will equip graduate students with the skills and knowledge to present their professional and academic experience in a competitive graduate school application. So you will get the chance to learn more details about how to write a professional resume and more skills about how to succeed in admission interview. So before we turn over to our guest speaker, I would like to start with a brief introduction about our network for our new followers. So who are we? What is Education USA? And how can we help you? So Education USA is a US Department of State network, which means we are your official source if you want to pursue your undergraduate or graduate studies in the United States. So there are more than 430 international student advising centers in more than 170 countries and territories. So if you are following us from a different country, make sure to reach out to the Education USA advisor of your country if you want, to go over the application process. And if you are following us from Libya, you're in the right place. I am your advisor. So we offer free, unbiased, accurate, and impartial information about all accredited universities in the United States. How can we help you, or how can Education USA help you? Number one, we offer free public information sessions. So as you know, if you are new on our Facebook page, you can go back to the live sessions that we had before, and you can learn from the different topics that we discussed. And also we do some chat sessions with university representatives in which representatives can share more details about the application process or financial aid opportunities or scholarships opportunities. We also had some sessions before with the consular section of the US Embassy. And we also had other sessions with Libyan alumni who studied in the United States. And it was like a great chance for them to share their experiences with you. And it could be one of you one day. And number three, we offer free individual consultations. So if you are a student, a parent, a professor, school counselor, if you want to get more details about studying in the United States, make sure to reach out to me and we can have Zoom meeting or a WhatsApp call or whatever suits you. So these are my contact details if you want to reach out to me. This is my WhatsApp number and this is my email address. If you are, of course, active on social media, you just have to type Education USA Libya on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and you'll find us all over there. And finally, this is the official website of Education USA. If you want to get more insights about the 5 steps to study in the United States, if you want to find your advising center, if you want to explore the financial aid opportunities for international students, or if you want to check the events that are taking place in different Education USA centers around the world. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm pretty sure you're gonna enjoy today's meeting. So now let's get started with Mr. Jay, and feel free to type any questions you have on our Facebook page. Enjoy.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Amira, for the introduction and the invitation to present this today. While I'm getting set up here, I'll just tell everyone I've been working with Education USA offices around the world for many years, and they're a fantastic resource. If you're even thinking about studying in the United States, I would encourage you to get in touch directly with Amira if you're in the region, because they'll really walk you through what can be a very intimidating process. There are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the US alone. So you need someone to help you, and I don't think there's a better person than Education USA. So let me just get set up here. I'm going to share my screen. I think that's been enabled. Great. Okay. Can I get a thumbs up, Amira, if that's coming through? Perfect. Great. Well, as Amir mentioned, my name is Jay Lewis. I'm the Director of Strategic Global Initiatives at Northern Arizona University. What that means is that I manage partnerships and develop programs to create opportunities for students like yourself to come study at Northern Arizona University. So very briefly, for those of you who may not be aware of Northern Arizona University, we're located in Flagstaff, Arizona, a small city at about 7,000 feet elevation. NAU has over 30,000 enrolled students in over 170 academic programs. That's at the undergraduate, graduate, and PhD levels. Our average class size is just 31 students, and the student faculty ratio, something we think is very important, is 18:1. So what that means in practical terms, you're going to know your professors, they're going to know you. And they're there to teach you, but they're also there to help you in your career. So that's part of the reason we think that direct interaction is preferable to a large class where a professor might not even notice if you weren't there. So that's part of the NAU experience. We're also globally recognized. We've received a number of international awards and accreditations. And if anyone wants to stick around and ask questions about specific programs, I can address those after the session itself. So I'm going to briefly talk about what I'm going to talk about. We're going to cover three main areas for graduate school applications here. The first is resume building, the second statements of purpose, the third interview preparation. So for each one of these, I'm going to review the different elements, and then we're hopefully going to have an interactive practice. Like many things, in person is better. So hopefully next time I'll be able to get over there in person, but hopefully we can share some of these lessons we've learned through chat or unmuting. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is resume building. These are the four elements of a resume: the header, education, experience, and some additional sections that I'm going to cover in more detail. So with a lot of these, I have to kind of move this bar around throughout the session. But the first section, the header, this is just your biographical and contact information. So name and or preferred name is what you want to have displayed most prominently. Preferred name. So for example, my name's Jay. My name's already quite short, so I don't go by a nickname or anything like that. But if, for example, your name was Alexander, but you go by Alex, then you could certainly go by list Alex on your resume header. Your phone number, and for those of you who are applying to graduate schools in the United States from outside of the United States, include the country code on your phone number. Email address. I usually don't have to mention this anymore, but I still do. Make sure you have a professional email address, something as close to possible as your name. So even if you have interesting hobbies or things of that nature, if you have what we would call a quirky email address, set up a more professional email address just for the sake of these applications. Likewise, if you have a LinkedIn account, certainly include that URL in your resume header. A couple of things not to include: date of birth. These not to include things can vary a lot by country, so I'll explain a little bit why they're important not to include for the US. Date of birth, there are a lot of laws and regulations that prevent any sort of discrimination in the US, and one of the things that can be discriminated against is your age. So you're not required to put your date of birth. Likewise, in many of the countries that I work with, students and job seekers will include a photo on the resume. In the United States, that's also not traditional. So please do not include a photo, even if that may be the case or something you do in your own country. Address, residence. When I was first getting out of college, this was something you included on your resume. But now, just because so many jobs are remote, even a lot of the graduate programs that you may be applying to are remote, this is not something that's necessary to put on your resume. In the application itself, you'll often be required to include that, but in your resume itself, that's not a document that needs all of that level of detail. Education is the next thing you're going to list, especially for this group, because you are possibly still an undergraduate right now, or early in your career, you're going to want to focus on your education next. The thing that's going to come very first is just the name of the institution itself. So you can see an example here, Northern Arizona University. Then you list the town. Most people do still list the date, followed by the degree itself. A couple of other things here. We do not recommend including high school, although if you've had some sort of technical school or vocational training, especially if it relates to the graduate program you're interested in, I would encourage you to include that. As I mentioned, the things you want to include about your degree, the type of degree, so a bachelor's of, the major, minor if you had one, when it was completed or when you expect that it will be completed. These next things, percentiles, GPAs, CGPAs, that's the cumulative GPA. Include those if they were good. If you're not sure, for most of our graduate students here at NAU, they have a 3.0 GPA or higher. So that's about a B average or higher. So if you're in that range or higher, you may want to include it on your resume. If not, I would just leave it to something more like the example that you have here. And certainly any scholarships or honors, if you're in the honor society, if you graduated with honors or Latin honors, so if you were magna cum laude, something like that, definitely include that under the institution. So the next thing you're going to talk about is experience. And I've listed a few different types of experience here because, again, I think many of you are probably early in your career, so you likely will not have a series of jobs that you can list out under work experience, but there's all other different kinds of experience. Anything relevant to the program you're applying to, any leadership experience that you've had in your community or at your undergraduate institution, certainly any medical lab / research experience that you've had as an undergraduate. I don't know how common that is over there. I do know at NAU, even at the undergraduate level, we offer a lot of research opportunities. So if you've had any of those prior to grad school, definitely include those. Same with an internship. Internships are almost expected at this point in the United States, so include that, and because that's so similar to work, include any tasks or details about your internship in bullet form below the internship. Any international experience, if you've worked, studied abroad, absolutely include that. But I think it's probably helpful to note that not all international experience happens abroad. So, for example, at your undergraduate college, you may have helped an international student organize an event. Like, for example, maybe you helped the Nigerian Student Association organize a cultural event that they were hosting. That's international experience. And any additional work experience that you may have had, certainly include that under experience. Here's some additional sections. A lot of our international students are very interested in STEM and technology fields. So if you have any software experience, whether it's formal training or just free courses or self-directed learning, if you're applying to like a computer science program, for example, definitely include any software or programming languages that you may know. You can see a few examples over here. Any languages that you speak, that's a very valuable skill to have in any program or any career, so certainly include that. Any involvement that you've had on campus, perhaps with clubs. At NAU, we have a number of different clubs. We have clubs for, for example, the Middle Eastern Students Association. So based on regions that students come from, we have future business leaders clubs, and we just have affinity groups as well. So the the softball intramural club. So if you've been involved in any sort of club like that, I think that's helpful to include a lot of these additional sections. What they do is really demonstrate more of who you are as a person. So away from just the clinical details of your experience so far, they give people who are reviewing a good idea of who you are and what you're like. And as you can see here, any professional affiliations, honors or awards, technical skills, any presentations you've given, that's also going to be helpful, especially this last one. If you give any presentations, include that if you're interested in applying for a graduate teaching assistantship, because they're going to want to know that you have public speaking skills. Okay, so hopefully I did not go too quickly on that first section. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for everything. But I would like to take just a couple of minutes, and we won't go into breakout rooms, but I will ask that you take some time and put together, let's start with education. So maybe put together an example of how you would type out your education for a graduate school resume. And I'll move this so you can see it. So let's just say 2 minutes. And then if anyone out there is feeling brave, I'll let you type your example of education in the comments, and we can take a look at that.
Meanwhile, I think that Muhammad Isa has a question, Mr. J.
Okay, great. Question?
Muhammad, would you like to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. I have just one question at this moment. It's about certificate equivalence, because I have studied in my country, which is Libya, and they gave me a certificate. Actually, they make the procedure of assessment of 100 scale, and then I continued my studies in Romania now, and they make this procedure as a 10-point scale. So what's your ideas about this subject, and how can we actually equivalent our certificates when we come to the United States for studying?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mohammed. Thanks for asking that. Well, two answers. So the first, if you're applying to graduate school at NAU, we have people in our international office where I work who are familiar with grade scales around the world. So we assess those here because we have that knowledge. Not everyone will have that knowledge. So what I would recommend, if we're talking about different grade point scales across countries, because I imagine they're, like you said, they're different between Libya and Romania, and possibly even Romania here. So list what the scale is. So for example, don't just list 9, because that could be 9 out of 100 or 9 out of 20 or 9 out of 10. So if you have a 9, for example, list 9 on a 10-point scale. Does that make sense? If you have a 3.5, list 3.5 on a 4.0 scale, which is the scale that we use.
Yes, I agree with that. Even when I try to mention that, I try to be specific about it. As I mentioned the point, it's like, for exactly, if I had 5, I would say 5/10, for example, or even I have a 9, I would say 9/10. So it would be precise, and to avoid more misconception about this matter.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'll type out an example of how I would probably, like, how I would actually do this. And this is going to vary, but I would say So if that came through, if I were applying to either a job or a graduate school in another country, and I was uncertain, but I had a GPA that was high and that I wanted to share, I would probably type it like I just did. And I see you've got an example here. Yeah, I think that's another good example. I think you don't need the period after 2020. As you can see, a lot of we don't include the period on a lot of these because for the most part, in the United States, we don't use complete sentences on resumes. You just want little chunks of information. Yeah, I think that's another good example, what you just typed out too, the 8.26/10 GPA. Yeah, so good question. Thank you. I hope I helped to answer it.
Yes, thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, does anyone care to share an example of their education, like Mohammed just did? Did anyone else type up an example that looks like one of the examples here? Okay, I'm not seeing hands raised. So it's later in the day there, so I won't call on people, but if anyone does have anything to share, I think it's helpful. And it's okay to take notes during this session. And if you follow along, you may just have a mostly completed application packet ready to go by the end of the session. So, but we'll go ahead and move forward because I want to leave time.
One more question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes, I think one of the most important steps is to have letters of recommendations from your previous teachers or professors, because it affects a lot on the process, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And most graduate school applications will request those. I don't have a section for that here because that's not something that you will be generating yourself. That's something that you will be asking for. But my one bit of advice on those, well, two bits of advice. Hopefully, as you're going through your career and your education, you're cultivating these relationships and staying in touch with people who you've worked closely with, who can speak to your skills. But also, in the event that you haven't, just make sure you're requesting recommendations from people who know you to a good degree and will speak positively about their knowledge of you. So it looks like, okay, someone said the internet connection's bad. Okay. Well, hopefully I'm still coming through. So I'm gonna move forward to the personal statement right now. Move this over here. These are the different sections that we're going to cover here about the personal statements. So some very generic components, and by generic we just mean these are components that you want to see in every personal statement. So introduce yourself, but with a personal touch. So for example, I could say, my name is Jay, I am from Texas. That's not especially personal. Those are just biographical details. But for example, if I were applying to an MBA program in marketing, I might say, my first experience with marketing started when I was growing up in a small town in East Texas, and my father ran the local advertising agency. So that tells a little bit of a story, which fills in just some basic biographical details and gives a better idea of who you are, I think, as a person. So that would be my recommendation. And I will mention, we occasionally have faculty joining us in these sessions. Our faculty review so many personal statements. So anything you can do to set yourself apart or make yourself more interesting, or make your personal statement, I dare say, fun to read, definitely include those. And that's what the personal touches are all about. As you go through your personal statement, you do want to tie it back to the different portions of your resume. You want to emphasize your strengths, of course, explain away your weaknesses. I'll talk about that here in just a second. And we're also going to talk about a few other targeted components. You're going to want to address all of the required and, when possible, preferred qualifications of either the job or the graduate program, and explain your choice of the university. This is very important, as well as your plan for the future. So here we go. So you want to identify your weak points and explain them away to the degree possible. So what do I mean by that? Here's a couple of examples. Maybe you have a low GPA. Maybe, unlike Mohammed, you don't have the high GPA on the 10 or the 100 point scale. The people reviewing your application, they're going to see that, because that's just a number that's going to be out there. So you want to address that. So maybe you have a low GPA, but you did really well on your examinations, or the English proficiency examination, the GRE, for example. Talk about that. Or maybe you had work experience that was happening simultaneous to your undergraduate degree. Maybe you were working a full-time job. Maybe you were supporting your family. If that's the case, it's hard to focus on that and school. So, I think that's worth mentioning, especially if it's in service of explaining something like a lower GPA. So the next thing, marginal, TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo, these are all English proficiency exams. First of all, if you have a marginal score, you might not know what marginal means. That just means so-so. Okay, so like the lower acceptable range for each of these tests. Well, maybe talk about in your personal statement how you actually have a good verbal, or different parts of your score were high, even if the cumulative score itself was not. And also, I think this is helpful. Talk about what you're doing to fix that. So if you had a low score on the reading section, talk about how you're reading English language newspapers every day to build your vocabulary, improve your reading skills. Mention that. If your speaking and listening scores were lower, talk about how you've started a conversation club to informally improve your English scores. So this is great, and something that you definitely want to mention, and something I think that there may also be existing resources for. If you're switching programs, this is one that we see fairly often. So what if in Libya you're a farmer, but you want to come to NAU and study computer science? Tell us why. Tell us that in 2022 you can't be a farmer without data, without some sort of data-driven decision process, and without irrigation systems that are connected to Internet of Things technology. Explain why you think this is a necessary pivot in your career, why you need these skills, why you need this knowledge, and also what have you done to bridge your farming knowledge with MS and CS, the Master of Science in Computer Science. So have you taken classes in the meantime? Have you taken like some intro level object-oriented programming or Java courses to help you start to learn? These are things you want to mention. Again, this is a very important thing that you want to mention. When Amir and I were talking at the very beginning of this session, excuse me, I mentioned that there are over 4,000 colleges and universities in the United States. So even if you're sure that you want to apply to, you want to come to a certain university, you may want to apply to multiple ones. But for each application, you want to talk about why that university specifically and that program specifically is a good choice. So I would suggest taking a look at the faculty pages. Each faculty page, many have a biography, but even if they don't have a biography, they'll talk about their specific research interests. So, if you are in the field of agriculture interested in coming to a computer science program, look at people who use heat mapping and interdisciplinary research to bridge those two fields. We have a lot of that goes on here. We're in one of the largest ponderosa pine forests in the world. So our computer science department actually does a lot of work with biology and with forestry and a lot of, like I said, very interdisciplinary stuff. So take a look at that, know why you want to come not only to this university, but why you want to be in that program. A final thing to include is your career goals. Do you have a plan for your education? This is kind of what we talked about. Oh, I'm going to go back to my large farm with these skills. And I don't know why I picked farming as the example, but I did, so I'm sticking with it. I'm going to go back to my large farm and apply these skills and become, the best farmer in the region. So talk about that. That also makes you stand out as an individual. So just given where we are on time, I'm not gonna break out for group practice here. I will see. Amira, do you know if we have any questions in the chat? I could open this up. I don't know if I have any private chats.
We do. Yes, we do. So we have a question from Mohammed again. And thank you so much, Mohammed, for being really active today. Let me just go back quickly to the question. Yep. And he said, why does most universities ask if the applicant is first generation graduate?
Good question. Because I'm going to try to make a short answer of this, but the American university system, we feel like we're not just training people for their careers. We're training people to be active participants in a democracy. So there's very much a social element and an equity element to higher education, the goals of higher education in the United States. So you'll hear this phrase a lot, like a level playing field. So we hope that the goal of higher education is to equip students to be citizens in a democracy, but also provide a means for social mobility. So if someone comes from a rich family in the United States, or if someone comes from a less affluent family, they should be able to come to a computer science program and get the same results. So because we see U.S. higher ed as sort of serving the social role as well, we think it's important to provide opportunities for people who have not traditionally had them. So I don't know if that's maybe that's too long and convoluted of a response, but we ask that because that's something that is incentivized. So, for example, if you say that you're a first generation college student, that's something that will be looked on favorably by the application committee. So that maybe I should have just left it at that. Are you there? I can't tell if you're asking a question.
No, that was a mistake. So we have a question from Rana, and she said, how would our performances be evaluated?
Yeah, good question. So they're based on a variety of factors, and that's a good reason that when you look at the application requirements, they include all of these different things. So, myself, I'm not amazing at taking tests. I'm okay at taking tests, but if I was just evaluated based on my test scores, they would say, maybe, but if you look at my test scores, if you look at my writing skills on my personal statement. If you look at the experience that I've had so far and how I've worked outside of the classroom to try to build skills in language or information systems, I think that gives a fuller picture. And I think that's what most committees want to see. I can tell you that's what they want to see here at NAU. You know, we don't want to just go down a list of, you know, this is Mohammed's test score, this is Albatul's test score, and just strike out everyone who has below an 85. We want to know who you are, what your interests are, because education really is personalized. So that helps us to provide that personalized experience.
And also, this is a reminder for everyone who's watching and for anyone who's in the Zoom meeting today. So if you have already started your application process and you're struggling with a personal statement and you need someone to proofread it for you, make sure to share your essays with me, and we'll definitely have, you know, even Zoom meetings to discuss them, or I can just go over them and share my feedback with you. Okay, so don't forget, that's one of the Education USA services.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Amira. And you know, I was thinking some of these resources are likely provided by Education USA. So I would just reiterate that if there's one office that can help you navigate through all the questions and direct you toward the information you need to make an informed decision, it's Education USA.
Thank you. So I think Aisha has a question. So Aisha, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, I do have a question, but it's not related to a personal statement. If it is okay with you, I want to ask, I wonder why American universities ask for a resume and not a CV. What's the difference exactly between a CV and a resume?
That's a very good question. So for the most part in the United States, resumes are used for careers. Resumes are more of a private sector. So if you're applying for a job at Google, you want to submit a resume. If you're applying to some masters, most PhD programs, and then faculty positions, you'll want a CV. So curriculum vitae for everyone who's not familiar with that term. So one formatting difference is that the resume, at least I was always told that your resume should be one page. Even if you're the president of the United States, your resume should be one page. And people have different opinions on that. I still, you know, I'm in the middle of my career, but my resume is still one page. And part of that's because I know a lot of people who are reviewing it are reviewing a lot of other resumes. A CV is more comprehensive. So, and because the CV is more academic, it's going to include things a resume wouldn't, like all speaking engagements that you've had, all presentations, any publication that you've ever had, any research project that you've ever been a part of. It's going to focus a lot more on that specialized experience. Does that make sense, Aisha?
Yes, thank you. One more question, if it is okay with you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. Not at all. One more question. We'll save the rest for the end, just so I can cover all the content. But go ahead.
Okay. So applying for postgraduate studies, is it different for a master's degree and a PhD degree? I mean, what are the requirements exactly for a PhD? Because I already have a master's degree. So is it any different, the requirements for applying to a PhD?
Yes, but they're so different. I probably can't provide a satisfying answer to that for you because they vary. The admissions requirements, even between different programs at NAU, are different. So you may need a different test score to be admitted to a applied linguistics program than you would for a computer science program. That's because we're an applied linguistics program, we need you to speak English at the highest level. And we require good English skills for computer science as well, but I'm just saying there's variation between those two programs just for test scores. But some programs will require GRE, some will require more academic experience. I would say for the most part, for master's programs, all you need, not all you need, but you'll need a bachelor's to apply, and that's usually fine in terms of academics. For some PhD programs, if you have a lot of other experience, you may be okay applying with just a bachelor's, because a lot of PhD programs, you earn a master's within that PhD. But I would also say there are probably many other PhD programs where you need a master's to apply for the PhD.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to continue just so that we can at least cover all the content. Hopefully I wasn't speaking too quickly before, because I'll try to speak slightly more quickly now. This is my favorite interview preparation. These are the things we're going to cover. I'm not going to tell you what they are because we're just going to cover. The first thing, this is most important. This is the framework for how you approach your interview responses. STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. So for each of these, for each question you receive, this is how you want to frame your answer. So I'll just, it's probably easier for me to give an example. So one common interview question is, tell me about a time you had a disagreement with your boss. That's a tough one, but it's often asked. And this is more for jobs than grad school, but hopefully it still helps explain. Tell me about a time you had a disagreement with your boss. So if I'm answering that question, I'm going to think STAR method. What was the situation, task, action, result? So situation, I'll say, oh, well, I was assistant manager at a shipping company just before the Christmas holidays in the United States. And I was trying to get all of these Christmas gifts delivered on time. But because supply chain issues, there was an extensive backlog, and we were not getting these Christmas gifts delivered on time. That's the task I was working on. Action. What was the action that I did? Well, I took a look at our process, and I saw that one of our processes was redundant. We were doing it twice when we could just do it once, and it would still achieve the same effect. So I told my boss, hey, I think we can remove one of these tasks, still have quality assurance, and we can get these gifts out on time. He wasn't sure. I tried to convince him, and eventually he decided to take a chance on my recommendation. As a result, all of our Christmas gifts were delivered on time around the United States. So that's just one example, but think about experiences that you've had and try to frame them in this way, because the people that you're interviewing with, whether it's for grad school or a job, are not going to have all the context. So something that, some situation like the one I just described that could be keeping you up at night for weeks, like, oh, should I talk to him about this? I don't know. The person you're interviewing with is not familiar with that experience. They're not familiar with your supervisor, possibly even your field. So that's why it helps to explain these in a very digestible way, using the STAR method. Often this is the first question that you get asked. Tell me about yourself. So this is not an autobiography. And, I've had to tell other people this before. They're not asking for any sort of personal information. So certainly don't tell them, my name's Jay. I just went through a breakup. I think I should go and hello. Okay, they just muted. What they're asking for is just a very general overview about your experience. And you can see here an example of that. So if they say, tell me about yourself, I'm going to say, my name's Jay Lewis. I'm a director at Northern Arizona University, studying, say, marketing again. Past couple of years, I have been involved in information systems, learning about information systems. These experiences have helped me further develop my technical skills. I've always been passionate about project management. I would love the opportunity to provide my passion and skills at Northern Arizona University. Some other things you'll likely be asked about: past experiences. How have your past experiences prepared you for graduate level training and research? And this is just helpful thing. These are helpful things to reflect on, to help you think about who you are as a person, what your goals actually are. You want to think this through because it's a big investment of time and money. Future plans. How what you want to do in the future requires graduate level training. So if, for example, there's a very specific field that you want to be in, so I just said project management. Let's say product development, project management. So how does your future goal tie into the training you want? Well, I need a master's in computer science because I need experience in coding and data architecture, things like that. Time and resource management. How will you use your time in the master's program to work towards this future? So not just in the classroom, in the lab. How will you network? How will you manage your different resources to make sure what you're doing now is preparing you for the future? So these are some very common questions. I won't ask anyone to answer these. I would encourage everyone on this call, though, to memorize these, to write them down, because you're going to be asked these either in a grad school interview or a job interview. And don't do what I did when I was first starting off in my career and just kind of wing it. Think about what your responses are. Try to give an honest response to show who you are, show why you're motivated, and show why you're a good candidate. And then let the committee make the best decision. You can see I put the source down here. I think this is one of the last things right here. 10 minutes to go. Again, whether it is a job interview or a graduate school committee interview, make sure that you have questions. You're not the only one being interviewed. You're also interviewing the program. You're interviewing the faculty. Maybe you've heard good things about the school, but once you get in the interview, you're not so sure. And maybe you want to interrogate that a little bit and find out. So it's a two-way street, as I mentioned. Write down some questions. I say 5 to 10. And I think that's a good number because I've been in a lot of these situations where I wrote down 3 or 4 questions and all of them are answered in the course of the conversation. And then it's like, oh, you answered all my questions. So, at the very least, ask, what does the process look like from here? What is the time? But you want to have some really, really specific questions, if at all possible, and have some extra ones to go just in case they're answered. This shows you've done research, and this also, this is important in you making an informed decision. Finally, virtual interview logistics, because many of you are not going to fly to the United States for a graduate school interview. You'll likely be doing something in this format via Zoom. Make sure that you have a good internet connection. Make sure that you look presentable. Just because it's via Zoom, don't be in your bed with your laptop on your lap with a t-shirt on. It's still a formal interview, even if it's being done remotely. So I think in the last 2 years we've caught up with using these virtual technologies in the same professional way that we would an in-person meeting. So just make sure, dress professionally, make sure there's nothing behind you that would reflect poorly on you. Make sure your internet connection is as good as possible. If you don't have a good internet connection at home, no worries. Try to find a quiet place, a library, something like that. Okay, so we're not going to break out for group practice. We're going to stick around for questions while I'm thinking about it. I believe Amira is going to share a list after this of our attendees. In the meantime, if you have questions, please go to Education USA. They're a fantastic resource. I'm sharing my email address. If you have NAU specific questions, please feel free to write me. We'll send you something here in the next week or two. Also, if you're looking to apply to a graduate program at NAU, which I can talk about in the Q&A, this is another thing. If you're applying to multiple graduate programs, there's an application fee. So that can add up. Those are usually like $50 to $100. So, if you apply to 4 or 5 programs, all of a sudden it's several $100. So this next strange code that I just shared, if you apply to an NAU program because you came here today, we want to recognize that. So this waives the application fee at NAU, which is usually, I think, $50 or something like that. Might have gone off. Everything else has. Not here, but so yeah, please feel free to use that. And I can speak to any specific questions now. I'll stop sharing my screen. And yeah, I'm happy to stick around.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the fee waiver. This is really amazing. So guys, if you want to apply, as Mr. J said, to NAU, that's a fee waiver for your application, which means you don't have to pay the fees of the application because you came to today's session. Thank you again, Mr. J. And yes, we have a question coming from Abdulaziz. And he said, what about architecture students? Do they need to upload their portfolio or any special files like work experience?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Abdulaziz, I would recommend looking at the individual program on the university websites that you're interested in applying to, because an architecture program at one university isn't going to have the same admission requirements as an architecture program at a different university. So take a look at that. I think likely they will. NAU does not have an architecture program, so I can't tell you what ours is. We have programs in civil engineering, environmental engineering, a lot of architecture adjacent fields, but not architecture itself. So I can't tell you what ours are. But yeah, I would encourage everyone to do a lot of research, take notes, start, have somewhere where if you're looking at different universities, you can go in one place and say, oh, Northern Arizona University's TOEFL score minimum TOEFL was 7. So what is it at, NYU versus NAU? That way you can have everything together. Wonderful.
Yep. So I don't think that we have other questions. Just a second. We have one. We're going to take this one. Okay. So it's coming from Aisha, and she said, I already have a master's degree. Can I apply for an MA degree that is different from my previous one?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And this, Amira and Education USA might be better equipped to address some of the things I'm about to say, but when you go to apply for your visa, the consular officials may be interested in knowing what is the second MA, how is it helping you in your career in a way that the initial MA could not. So there may be some questions there, but yeah, I have 2 masters, so you absolutely can.
I have one more question, if you don't mind.
Oh, not at all.
Okay, I am currently a PhD candidate, which means that I am in the phase of writing my thesis, my final thesis. If I applied on another PhD program, will that be affected on my evaluation process?
So is this, Mohammed, is this a similar question to Aisha's question, but with at the PhD level?
Yes, kind of.
Yeah, so I mean, I can tell you, you know, at NAU, I mean, I don't know if you're talking about a PhD in the same field or a different field for the PhD or a related field. It would not, at least at NAU, I mean, barring that you meet the other qualifications, you could still be admitted to a new PhD program. That's certainly something that you would want to, again, address in your personal statement. What the second PhD will prepare you for in your career. But yeah, as far as I know, you would not be limited from pursuing a second PhD.
So I am going to rephrase my question. So I was referring to the fact that I did not have a PhD, but I am a PhD graduate, which means that I don't have the PhD, but I have fulfilled all the requirements for the PhD, you know?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I understand the distinction. I mean, you know, in the US, there in the first few years of your PhD, there's coursework that you take, and then you go on to your dissertation, which includes a defense. So, you know, I know in some cases in the United States, if you just stop at the coursework, you're awarded a master's. And there's a specific term for that I forget what it is. So I'm not sure, Mohammed, if you're saying that you have that, the master's without PhD, or you haven't defended yet. But yeah, as far as I know, that wouldn't prevent you from being admitted. You would still likely need to complete all the requirements. We do allow some transfer credits at the graduate level, but we only allow up to, I believe it's 9. So that's, you know, that's a semester at the graduate level, but there's no guarantee that all the courses will transfer. So you would still need to meet all of the requirements of the new program in the United States.
Okay, thank you. It's just the fact that that I want to continue and make another PhD in the same major, but with a different minor specialization, if you get what I asked.
Okay, yeah, same answer. I mean, I don't think you'd be prevented from doing that. It would, you know, there would, because a PhD takes so long and it's such a commitment, I think you would want to explain what the second PhD can do for you, and, you know, and make sure the committee understands, you know, that you are willing to commit that. I mean, I think it's like, you know, 5 to 7 years here in the US. So
is that the normal period that when one wants to have a PhD that need to have in the United States?
yes, I think it's usually 5 to 7 years.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so great. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Special thanks, of course, to Mr. Jay for joining us today and giving this great presentation. I'm pretty sure this was a very beneficial one. So for anyone who joined us lately, you can rewatch our session on Facebook, and we'll upload it on our YouTube channel as well. And if you still have any specific questions related to today's topic, feel free to reach out to our speaker or even to me. And if also, of course, you have any other questions related to the application process, or if you're looking for scholarships opportunities, and if you want to start, you know, applying, make sure to reach out to me as well. So have a great day. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much, Mira. Thanks to EdUSA. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.